Welcome to the Leafy podcast, helping real estate investors and entrepreneurs grow.
Let's start the show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Leafy Podcast. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Tammy Gearling, the podcast manager, and I'd like to introduce our hosts, Brian Price and Jennifer Glugerick, here today. And they have an amazing guest on for today. So I will go ahead and pass it off to Brian and Jennifer so they can get started with our interview.
Okay, well, this is really great, and it's kind of fun because when I say this host's name, I got it right the first time. Unlike Tammy, who after 5 years still won't get my name. So anyway, we have a guy who is super cool because he comes from a digital marketing background. He's a first-generation immigrant from the UK. Came over when he was 5 years old, and during the 2008 recession he fell in love with digital marketing and it changed his life. So he's got 11 years of experience leading digital teams in senior leadership roles on over 600 projects: pharma, life sciences, financial services, legal, fitness, consumer goods, you name it. Then he founded Nova Zora Digital in 2012, and he's the host of a very popular podcast, Digital Savage Experience podcast. So we want to welcome to the show today, Roman Prokopchuk. So
Thanks
thank
for
you
having
so
me
much.
on. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's great. It's nice meeting you. And did I still get it right? Prokopchuk.
Yep.
Yay! So he's in Jersey. He's in Jersey. Have you always been in Jersey?
Yep. I've been here since I've came to the United States. Sometimes I want to leave, but I'm still here.
Yeah, right now it's nuts. There's so much nuts stuff that's going on. And now the Ukraine is like totally in the news. So now if you say where you came from, people are like, oh yeah, they want to ask you, or is that even happened to you? Has anyone even brought it up, or is it still too new?
I mean, it's been brought up, but with the whole war in Ukraine and all that and annexation for the past few years, people have been kind of bringing it up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what led you. You said with 11 years into digital marketing in the recession. So what led you into starting just as a digital marketing and falling in love with it?
So basically need. I graduated with a degree in criminal justice in 2008. Before I graduated, I had an internship with the Secret Service on the counterfeit currency squad. So when I graduated, federal, state, and local jurisdictions basically froze hiring in terms of, government budgets. Mm-hmm. So at that point, for months, I was looking for jobs. People with master's and doctorate degrees weren't getting hired at that point. So obviously, in certain careers, I wasn't as well. And I was kind of down for a few months. And the only thing that really kept me sane was going to the gym consistently. And I made a few connections there. And I, shared that, I just graduated, can't find a job, kind of down. And somebody basically said, stop by my car after you're done. And I did. And they handed me a packet, which was about search engine optimization. And they said, read this, go online, learn some more. Some other aspects of digital, like social, that was still kind of in its infancy, and basically come on for a financial services firm and handle kind of our digital marketing. And I started from there, and then I got picked up by a bigger company a few months later, LexisNexis, and I've been, director at a few other companies, and founded my own company in 2012, where I help clients of all sizes.
Cool.
And so go ahead, Brian.
Oh, yeah. So you talk about doing a lot of pharma and life sciences. Is that something you kind of dove into that you like the most, or how did you kind of get into those types of areas?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I like pharma and life science is very regulated and financial. So creativity wise, there's a lot of stuff you can't really do.
Okay.
At a lot of agencies I was at where I led teams, that's where I kind of started in that. But, I was kind of given it and I was good at it. And I think I've worked in so many industries where I take something that works in one industry that's not being tried in another, and then test it and apply it where other people's aren't doing that, and kind of break into that market that way.
Very cool.
That's interesting how you're able to reapply that. That market, your story is so familiar to me. I happen to be, well, I'm dating someone now, and they have a very similar story that happened all around that same time. Went to the military, came out and had a full career path, ended up going to law enforcement school. Then they took EMT school because that was part of their progression. And then they went and got a dual major in IT services. And then everything happened. And then they were completely unable to find a job, nothing in their career. And they ended up stumbling into working in the oil and gas industry and plant work. And it's just crazy how, you know, life can throw you a little bit of curves like that. And you're sitting there thinking, man, this sucks. You know, this is not what I thought I was going to be doing. Well, I don't know how many people that are entrepreneurs end up doing what they thought they'd be doing. Right. And so tell me, how do you feel now? Like, what is your path now? You've got this podcast. So tell us about the podcast and what your plans are for that and how that you stumbled into that.
Yeah, podcast, I think it's important if somebody wants to start something, start it when you know that idea comes and not get put off by other people or kind of their fears. So I kind of wanted to start and get into a podcasting in like 2014, but never kind of pulled the trigger on it. And about a year and a half ago, I started my podcast. At first, it was just me talking about digital marketing stuff, giving relevant tactics, talking about, I'm also a foster parent, my experiences with the system and stuff we're dealing with our foster kids, kind of stuff running the gambit, news related things in terms of digital and social. And then last March, I switched over to more of an interview format where I've interviewed since March 80 people ranging from CEOs, startup founders, athletes, authors, you know, therapists, people with interesting journeys where the audience can learn from and apply.
Wow.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's great. So what are some of the most interesting things you found from doing all those interviews?
I mean, there's commonalities to success, you know what I mean? There's common themes like not giving up. I mean, a lot of stuff is cliche, but outlasting the people that you're not necessarily competing in or with, but if you're in a specific field, if you withstand kind of the storms, and if you hit a roadblock or a dead end and pivot from it as fast as possible, you can succeed. And a lot of people start out like I started. I have a degree in criminal justice, and now I'm in digital marketing. A large portion started with something else and got to where they are now throughout, you know, different journeys.
Yeah. You know, I can relate to that too. I actually started out as an engineer and then got into, you know, entrepreneurship and operations and even marketing as well. So yeah, I can totally relate that you kind of have to shift throughout your career into different areas, especially when one, either it doesn't interest you, or two, it just doesn't work out and the landscape changes. So definitely is being able to pivot is a valuable skill to have.
Yeah, and I think doubling down on your strengths, because oftentimes in you know, traditional education, people, you know, tell you to work on your weaknesses, but I mean, as an entrepreneur, you should double down on your strengths, and the weaknesses you should definitely obviously outsource or find a solution for skilled people where you're not wasting your time and focusing on the things that you're actually good at.
That's funny. We just brought that up before the show. I was telling Roman that, you know, about my roof thing, which if y'all are listening to the show, we have the roof thing. So I was like, yeah, I'm probably just going to do the sheetrock myself because I can't seem to get someone here quick enough. And I thought, that's the entrepreneur in me. Let me just do it myself. But then, is that the highest, best use of my time and talent? And that's something I have to challenge myself with almost every day. Because I think many entrepreneurs, especially marketers and salespeople, have get to a certain point, and you're good at a lot of little things. You know, maybe you can do Photoshop, but then you're also good at slapping together a little website that looks okay. And you can do sound bites because maybe you have Adobe Audition and that was fun and you were okay with that. But then you're running a business, so you have to run the business, but you want to still do all these little things. You have to pull back from that and go, okay, let me focus on what's the highest use of my time and talent. Do you find that with you, with the things that you do, is that true? Or are you so uber focused that you don't have to worry about that anymore, Roman?
I mean, I'm focused, but there's stuff that obviously in terms of growing, you know, in a career or as a human, you still want to test things out or continually, you know, keep growing. So stuff like with the podcast. So learning how to, you know, edit audio myself, or at least understanding it. So if I do outsource it, I know that, you know, the people I outsource it to do a good job, or I could be at least, you know, competent on speaking terms. So focusing on what I'm good at, but, keep redefining, because the market is also changing in terms of the digital landscape and how content's being consumed throughout the web, and other things that are coming on, like, smart home technology, augmented reality, virtual reality, and whatever else the next few years kind of holds.
Yeah. Yeah, I know with digital marketing, especially, it keeps changing almost every day, it seems. So what's kind of some of the trends that you're seeing that are things are kind of changing into or out of that you've kind of noticed lately?
Well, I mean, like, local search for obviously brick and mortar is still big, but things like voice is coming into play. Optimizing and having structured data to show up for Google HomePod, because with that, you have one result. You ask, the smart speaker, find me so-and-so company or so-and-so business. Well, they can only give you one option. So obviously it's a little harder than showing up for several, or the opportunity to show up for several on a search engine results page. So voice is continuing to grow. Obviously, we're on a podcast in terms of audio medium, and there's only a certain amount of content types currently that are being consumed. So audio, straight text, visual images, and video, and it's the mechanisms change, but good content doesn't.
Yeah, that's interesting, because a lot of people have, their home pods, as you said, is that a lot of people are utilizing those to search. And now, and so, I didn't even think about how you can actually get your stuff on the top, so that when people are searching, they find you versus somebody else. Are you finding that there's methodologies you can use to that, or how are you kind of getting you and your clients up on those types of areas?
Well, with stuff like that, it's a lot of it's structured data. So on the back end, obviously highlighting data types. And like you said, the changing landscape of search engine results pages also. Fairly recently, Google started showing individual podcast episodes and feeding more so their Google Podcast platform. Before, if you kind of got grandfathered in, if you started a podcast maybe at least a year and a half ago, your podcast was still on Google Play, but now they're really trying to push the acceptance of Google Podcasts for Androids and iPhone or Apple devices. So they actually, if you search for a specific podcast, the results show up individual episodes within the search engine results page itself. So continually looking at the landscape, a lot of it is back end structured data and marking up data for specific devices. But like I said, at the end of the day, the content has to be good for you to stay somewhere, and a lot of people chase the search engine. So they're optimizing for search engines. So even though, you get somebody to your site, they're not going to convert because they're not getting the information that they need. And then eventually with that high bounce rate, because you're not proposing, adequate services or a solution for a user, Google's going to keep pushing you down because they want relevant results for their searches.
Yeah, that's so true, is having good content. I know a lot of people are always looking at, SEO type of stuff and optimizing for that. And then they forget about actually providing something worthwhile to actually look at. And so, it's a great point, is you do want to make sure that you actually are giving value and what you're doing is good, because otherwise there's really no point. You get the best people there, but like you said, they're not going to convert. They're just going to basically, come and see that it's just, oh, wow, he got me here. You almost been catfished more than anything.
Yeah, and what you were talking about, Brian, just FYI, I was looking into Google and Amazon, because I did an app once on Amazon, and it was a toy app, a fun app, right? And I did it like a year ago for fun. I wanted to see if I could do it. I used a program called Invocable, and I just went back and I said, I wonder how that's doing. It's like 300 people had downloaded it. And it was just me like talking, and I sang a song. I sent it to a friend, like, hey, I want to just lighten up your day. And they could say, like, did you have a good day today? I would ask them through the echo, and they would say yes or no. And I had these call things. It was very basic, like a very, basic AI that I built out. But now you can do other things. So like for certain companies, they don't realize you don't have to go that far to have all of that. You can have a simple, easy to remember call phrase on that, and then it can call the company. So just things like that, if you want to get on that, it's amazing just sitting it there. And if somebody just goes, can I do this? If you make it easy enough. And the only thing is you've got to like think of it in interesting ways because maybe somebody else did it, but different ways to say it and stuff like that. So there's always that. So have you done any apps or anything like that for the home assistants for smart homes yet, or that's not part of what you're doing there at Nova?
No, I mean, and I think not every business needs an app. There's a lot of companies that push apps, but I don't think every type of business needs an app. There's things like for Amazon, the 365 briefing, so you can have a specific fact or, give some kind of knowledge snippet and add value that way and still be in a device like that where you're not necessarily, in the Google Play or Apple Play store, but you're optimizing stuff that, still is adding a difference and is adding value.
Which social media do you, or a suite, or maybe one or two or three, even three, do you think that an average entrepreneur just starting out should use, or is it different per industry, what they should start out with? Or is there any one that everyone you think needs to have at least this? What would it be?
Well, at minimum, you should at least create an account just for branding purposes, because a lot of people just check. And if you're starting to build a brand, they kind of take up real estate in search engine results pages as well. But like you said, I think it's important what demographic you're targeting to which one you should be active on. So if you're going after B2B, obviously you should be on LinkedIn, investing marketing dollars for paid on LinkedIn, constantly corresponding and adding value in groups. I try to be LinkedIn in order: LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. Facebook is still kind of personal, but if you're selling specific products, it's still good. And in terms of kind of the value added, it's still fairly inexpensive compared to stuff like, Google Ads or other Google properties like YouTube. So it's still fairly cheap for you to test if you're doing something from the paid perspective, but organic perspective, you should definitely at least build a presence, but really focus on your core channels. So you should still have a presence in terms of if, demographics change, or if a channel disappears. So if Facebook gets shut down by the government for something, you know what I mean? Just out of nowhere. Or like we had MySpace, I don't know when it was, like 15 years ago, and
it's
it disappeared.
Still there.
It's still there, but
yeah,
it got killed because it got, corporate, and corporate kind of fed all their, media into it and kind of lost its value from, its grassroots start. But you shouldn't really depend on one thing, like put your, eggs in one basket, but you should definitely brand yourself and at least have some kind of minimal presence on most of the channels. But, like demographics, you don't necessarily have to be on TikTok if you're targeting, decision makers, C-suite related, because I'm pretty sure they're not necessarily on TikTok or making music related to kind of karaoke videos.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Depending on your business.
I'm amazed just with marketers who do affiliate marketing like ClickBank, and they're doing affiliate marketing just for beauty products, how well the sales are on Snapchat and Facebook for that those two really generate a lot of money for people who go into e-commerce with certain specialized products. Like just this week, I've actually bought that Ponyo, the little hair tie for ponytails. Okay, Roman, I realize you don't know what a Ponyo is.
Yeah, no
but
ponytail here.
It's the coolest thing ever. It doesn't tear your hair out, and it won't come out, and it's just super cool, right? And it looked really cool in the video. They have these great viral videos, and I thought, what the heck? And then I did it, and I thought, I'm going to look up the stats on that, because, for our company too, like maybe this would be good for that. And I was just really amazed at the numbers I was seeing, and how well that demographic is. So when you get a new client, so let's say a new client, they go to novazoradigital.com, just FYI, novazoradigital.com, and we'll have all the links for this, and they want you to work with them. What are the things that you look at on the back end as to what you want to focus on if it's an industry you haven't been in before? Though I kind of doubt it with your history.
Well, I mean, it's dependent on where they stand. So kind of doing an initial audit to see what's been done, if things have been done the right way in the past, if, targeting was correct. Do they actually know who their customer is, or were they just throwing things like at the wall and hoping it sticks? Another thing, a realistic budget, you know what I mean? So they may have, like a caviar budget, but they can only afford, I don't know, something that's, from the dollar store. I don't know what other analogy to use, but being realistic in terms of what you want and what you have in terms of investing in it. Because if, your goal, and I ask you what your goal is to, have X amount of sales, but that's going to cost, $20,000 a month in investment, but you're only willing to spend $500 a month. Well, there's a disconnect, and, goals have to be reset in terms of, what you can actually get from an agency or a freelancer, or what you can actually do yourself in terms of some of the things that can move the needle that can be prioritized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think the phrase you were looking for is caviar taste or champagne taste with a beer budget.
Yeah, that's
right. It's from some song. Anyway,
works.
we're going to pause right here and go to commercial, and we're going to be right back with Roman Prokopchuk. We'll be right back.
Attention real estate investors and entrepreneurs. Did you know that real estate investors are a primary target for lawsuits? According to the National Survey of the Court data, 25% of Americans risk being sued in their lifetime. However, if you are a real estate investor, you have a 95% chance of being sued in the next 20 years. Leafy Legal Services helps you protect your assets and strategically grow your business and wealth. Leafy Legal Services are experts at the Series LLC and Delaware Statutory Trust, two of the newest and most ideal legal structures for real estate investors. Leafy Legal Services have the most personalized and affordable solutions for setting up LLCs. Property owners are always at risk when it comes to their assets. Anonymity is so important. If you own just a rental house and you own your home, you have to protect yourself and your properties from any potential legal issues. Leafy Legal Services have the right solutions to make sure you are happy and feel secure. They offer cost-effective documentation that suits their clients' needs. For a free consultation and ebook, visit leafylegalservices.com. They are waiting to hear from you. leafylegalservices.com.
Hey guys, okay, we are back with Roman Prokopchuk. He is the owner of NovaZoraDigital.com, and he is the podcast host for Digital Savage Experience Podcast. We've been talking to him about some amazing things. If you're a real estate investor, if you're an entrepreneur, if you want to know how to amp up and get some adrenaline into what you're doing to get your message out there, then this is the guy to talk to. So we're back with him. Brian,
Awesome.
I think you had a question for him.
I did. One of the things I want to ask is we talked a little bit about knowing your customer, and I think it's so important that people kind of dive into that quite a bit, and people I feel like they skip it. When it comes to knowing your customer, what do you suggest people to kind of understand as they're spending money on attracting customers?
Well, just sitting down and understanding like what's happened. Obviously, the good thing to have is data, because you can't make a data-driven decision without any data. So, we want to attract so-and-so, and we've been getting these type of clients. Okay, well, do you have those numbers to back it up, or where they're coming from digital, traditional? If you do different conferences or webinars, where are they coming from and who they actually are? And if that's not kind of your target audience, or maybe the price point's too low in terms of the clientele you're attracting for services or even high-end products, understanding kind of who they are, just age-wise, maybe if it's ethnicity related, if it's a geographic region and not only a country. Honestly, you should really drive down to the pain points you want to solve with that product or solution, and who they are, who has that buying power for that. Are they stay-at-home moms? Are they blue collar? And you can actually go through and maybe even look at ads platform, the back end, how they use targeting for different demographics, and utilize some of that as well, and kind of make your own target. Even if you're not running specific paid ads, you can utilize it to make your own kind of persona. But if it's too small for persona, at least make a specific segment if you're targeting someone or a group a little bit more broadly.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And if someone is just starting out, and they don't have any data yet, what would you kind of suggest to start, to, figure out who their customer ideally is?
Well, looking at previous sales, I mean, if it's e-commerce, what's your store done? If you have a website,
Okay.
hopefully you have at least Google Analytics, so you have those
Mm-hmm.
numbers. You've set some kind of goals in the past that you've hit or
Mm-hmm.
not, but getting some information from somewhere, whether it's online, whether it's specifically talking to,
Mm-hmm.
previous clients, having a user group, just getting some kind of information where it's not only an assumption.
Right. Okay. That's great advice.
I think also too, looking at your competition and seeing who's responding there. So if your competition has a Facebook, look at who's replying to their Facebook. Look at how they're engaging with people and look those people up and get a testing of 10, 15 profiles that are reporting to them and try to see if you can figure out, I would like to get that one, might help too. I think people just starting out, if you're just starting out in business, everybody wants to provide everything they can to everyone. And really, when you start out, there's this cone, it's a double inverted cone. So when let's say you start out very small, I'm going to start out in my city and I'm going to provide in this one tiny city, let's say I'm going to provide staffing services. So everyone you can think of, secretaries and lawyers and engineers and doctors or whatever. So everyone, in this tiny little city. But that's not where you make the most money. Where you make the most money is when those two things reverse and you're finding like carbon black engineers with over 15 years of experience that have been plant managers, and you do that worldwide. Mm-hmm. Those people are going to be making bank because they've niched to a very fine, infinite degree compared to the one person who provides everything in Kalamazoo, or not even Kalamazoo, that's a pretty big town, wherever, teeny tiny ville, on Elm Street, whatever. So I think that's, do you help people do that, redefine their niche when they're just like, I want to sell this to everyone in the entire world?
Yeah, better understanding your client, and kind of, even if you, had some kind of success from the digital standpoint on your website, where are you kind of falling flat? And then, conversion rate optimization comes into play. Maybe some redesigns in terms of how you're implementing kind of the structure of your page. If you don't have, an explanatory video or kind of a branded video, maybe adding one, or product videos, or adding specific reviews or a feed from a, review site where you have positive reviews that feed right into that page, or adding as much information, as much value, and as much trust for somebody to make a decision, and make it as easy as possible for a user that lands somewhere to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone calls you, let's say, you get Jane Doe and she's like, hey, Roman, I don't even know where to start. I want to set up a consult. What is the process that you go through to do that? And I'm not telling you to give my pricing range, but for someone, before they would contact you, what is their budget? Like, will you take someone with $100 a month budget, or do they have to start up somewhere else? Or are you just going to look at the potential of that client, how to work with them and do that? Tell me a little bit about the process of how they vet you and you vet them. Do you know what I mean with that?
Yeah, sure. So it's usually 4-figure to 5-figure a month, but that doesn't mean I don't have the conversation. So like, if you don't know where to go, you're stuck. I mean, I've done a lot of pro bono stuff, and people have direct messaged me on, Instagram, or messaged me on LinkedIn, can you help me? Like, I jump on calls and, video conferences free of charge, and kind of try to help a business at least steer them in the right direction and point them to the specific things they could do internally, maybe to move the needle, if they have a person that may handle it or point them in the right direction. So just because you don't have the budget doesn't mean you cannot speak to me or get advice from me. I'm more than happy to kind of help out and give back in that sense.
That's really awesome. That is truly awesome, because there's a lot of people that are very good at what they do, and they don't want to give back. And so I really commend you for that, because helping those people, eventually they're going to remember that and they'll come back to you. And there's a lot of goodwill that you put out in the universe, by doing that. So so right now you work strictly with Nova Zora Digital, and then you do your podcast. But then tell us a little bit before we go about the work that you do with your foster kids, and because you talk about this a lot on your podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I eventually want to be some kind of advocate or whatever, because there's about 700,000 kids in the foster care system in the United States. And I believe about 20 to 30,000 age out. So that means the parents or guardians had their parental rights terminated and no one's ever adopted them. So they've just been in the system. And the kids that age out, they have like, double-digit percentage chance of ending up in a gang, dead, on drugs, homeless, just because of, that's happened to them. So kind of backstory, one reason me and my wife became foster parents, we got licensed in June 2018, was we had a journey with infertility. So in the past 3 years, we've had 5 miscarriages, which obviously, is hard to deal with, but we figured we can do foster to adopt and, maybe build our family that way and still obviously try with the whole infertility stuff. So we had a placement, our first placement, June 2018, we had for a year that we thought we were going to adopt 2 brothers, but they ended up being reunified with their mom, biological mom, which was hard. But since then,
that is hard.
Yeah. So we're still kind of, coping with that, but we have another long-term placement now after 3 months of them going back in May. And since then we've had about 10 kids in our home, short and long term.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, gosh. And that is such a double-edged sword too, because on one hand, you're in love with them. They're your kids now. And then no, that is their parent. And if the parent can get back on track and be the parent they're supposed to be and get the help they want, then, that's, you have to tell God, okay, well, I trust in in what's happened in this process then. But, that's still tough because you got to put a lot of faith and there's so much fear, when you love them so much. That'd be very difficult for me. I'm going to tell you, I'd be really wanting to third degree that person. I took in a foster kid once and they gave him back to the parent and she was back within, she was 3. So her and my son were like little identical twins at that time. And they looked alike too. And I just fell in love with her. And it was absolutely horrible because she didn't rehabilitate. So I had another story with that. And there's not much you can do. But then on the flip side, I talk to parents all the time and it's very different for them. So you have to just, I don't know. maybe I'll cut that best. Yeah, hope for the best. I don't want to put people off on it. I don't want to put people off on it because you do have to go in with your eyes wide open and your heart wide open. And you do have to do that.
Yeah, New Jersey is a reunification over anything state. So you can be almost homeless, almost back on drugs. They still push you to reunify over a stable, foster home or whatever. So in that sense, I don't necessarily believe with the system. I think there's a lot of laws and the system itself is flawed. But, that's one reason the recidivism rate, the kids end up back, a large percentage of the time, because I don't think the state, or at least New Jersey, doesn't do enough to really set up the guardians to succeed in that sense.
Yeah. It must be quite interesting to earn the trust of the kids as they come and go. What have you kind of learned from that?
Well, I mean, a little backstory. So the 2 kids we thought were going to go adopt, we haven't seen them in 3 months. So the mom, before they got reunified, said, I'm moving back to Chicago, where she's originally from, or at the very least pulling them from the daycare that's a half mile away from our house. So, we got this long-term placement a month ago. We put them in the same daycare and we show up and the 2 boys are there. They're standing in the window waving to us. So it was like a shock for both of us. So it's painful and happy every morning because they still run up to us and say, hi, Mom, hi, Dad, love you, every morning. And we can't do anything about that. So it's very tough.
Oh, man.
Imagine.
Man, okay.
If someone wanted to get involved with the foster care system, what would you suggest people do, whether they're in New Jersey or anywhere in the U.S. that's listening to this?
You can reach out. The department is called different things in different state. Usually it's child services, and you go to orientation if that's something you want to do. You have to have a thorough, it probably takes at minimum 6 to 10 months to get a formal like background check, a story about your family, your goals. And then you have to do, at least in New Jersey, about 42 hours of in-class kind of training with, other people that, are trying to become foster parents.
Yeah.
And then eventually where everything gets approved, you need your home approved. So some houses or homes are deemed unfit for that. Like it can even be failed for stupid stuff like, the door's not wide enough. So obviously you're not going to do structural changes to your home. And that's one reason a lot of good foster homes don't get approved. But in that sense, if you're approved, you get a license, and then you specify if you want to do foster to adopt. There's something which is called respite care. So it's only emergency placements and short-term placements, and basically go from there.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, because I think a lot of people want to get involved. I'm not too familiar with the foster system, but I know people that have want to get involved, and they just not sure where to even start. So that's good advice to get to know that.
And to know the process that there's.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about, now we're going to be ending it up soon, but I want to talk to you a little bit about your podcast, because you're on, how many times a week do you drop, and when can people hear you? And your podcast is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast. And I looked it up, and it's everywhere. You type it in, it doesn't matter what app you're in, he's everywhere. So tell me a little bit about how many episodes that you do. And
right now, twice weekly.
Okay.
It's a little crazy with 2 times. I mean, I might try to get to 3, because right now I have about 4 months of content, into the future.
Wow.
So that just has to be if I start outsourcing certain things or how I want to scale it. But yeah, like you said, I'm on, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Stitcher, just look for it. It's in like 20, 30 places. So.
Well, I want to thank you so much for everything we talked about today. And you've given, I know Brian, he does a lot of our like overseeing of all the project management for our marketing. And so I could tell even with his questions too, that he was like checking off these sticks. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, that's a good one. So thank you so much. And thank you for giving so much information, because anyone who's listening to this, you can utilize, there's at least 3 or 4 really good nuggets here that probably can bring in a couple of leads for you, because this was a lot of good stuff. Tammy, go ahead and take it away.
All right, awesome. Yeah, thank you again, Roman, for all the information and for being on the show. And I will have the contact information for Roman in our show notes. So if you would like to get a hold of him, you can take a look at those. Or if you have a question that you would like me to pass on to Roman, please find me at Tammy, Tammy, at leafylegalservices.com. Just shoot me a quick email and I will get that on to Roman. If you would like to leave a comment, please do email me with any comments. We'll give you a shout out on the next podcast. And if you have questions or know anyone that you would like to be a guest on our podcast, please do email me. And thank you again, Brian and Jennifer, for hosting today, as always. And please look us up, like us, make comments. We're on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, wherever you need to find us. And just thank you again, everyone, for listening, and have a wonderful week.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.